Hi there, this is Professor Juris, and I wanted to make you a quick video and go over alternative process papers or papers that you can use to print cyanotypes, Van Dyke Brown, and gum printing and platinum palladium printing. All the papers, and we'll talk about them and help you make some choices. Now, this is the paper that I have listed on the syllabus, and it is probably the best paper that's out there that I found for printing everything. So you can print cyanotypes, Van Dyke Browns, gum prints, platinum palladium prints on this paper. It is an exquisite paper and it does a great job. Now, you can get this in like different sizes, like 8 by 10 and stuff. The paper that I had the bookstore carry was 11 by 15, and it comes in a pack of 25, and it's around that same price. I'm sure it might be a little bit more, but it's close to that. So it actually is a really good price, and it depends on what size prints you're actually making for the size paper that you use. Now, the nice thing about this paper is if you get it in this size, you can actually tear it down, and I'll show you that in a second. But in other words, this paper would be good if you wanted to make 8 by 10s. If you were printing digital 8 by 10s, this is a perfect size paper to put an 8 by 10 negative on, because it does give you some border around the perimeter of the paper. Another thing that you can do, like I said, is tear it down. So let's look at that. Here I have a little drawing that I made that shows this is an 11 by 15 sheet of paper, and if you tore it, you could actually get 4 pieces out of this that are 5 by 5 by 7 by 5. So you would actually be able to make 4 prints on this if you were using 4 by 5. So if you were using like a 4 by 5 camera or 4 by 5 pinhole camera and had 4 by 5 negatives, each one of those sheets you would be able to make 4 prints from by simply marking it with a pencil and then tearing it with a steel ruler. Now you could also put 2 1/4 negatives on this, and you could simply do them on that size, or you could probably even cut this down into 9 pieces or 6 pieces for 2 1/4, so that the paper would still be a little bit bigger than the negative. So it's an ideal size to work with, I think. And one of the reasons that I chose this paper, because it's tried and true. So again, there's a lot of different watercolor papers out there and so forth that you can print on. Some of them work good, some of them don't. So as a beginner, it was just learning these processes. It's a good idea to eliminate the error that can come from different papers. So by using a different paper, one that you maybe find at an art supply store or somebody gives you, you might have good luck with it, or you might not. You might be wondering, why is this not printing good? And one of the reasons, it could be the paper. Um, I was reading something years ago about a photographer, an artist that was printing on a certain paper, and then all of a sudden he started to get really bad results, and he couldn't figure it out, and he kept testing it and testing it. And then he wrote a letter to the paper company, found out that they changed the formula of the sizing that's on the paper. And on the photographic paper itself, if you took like a regular sheet of watercolor paper that was not sized, there's actually a coating on it. So there's a coating on these papers that are specifically made. Hahnemehl has scientists. This paper is made in Germany. They had scientists that actually designed this paper for printing alternative processes. So it works really, really good. And this is the paper that I recommend. It'll keep things simple. Now, one of the things that I said in class was, when you're starting out, especially for the cyanotype, the first process, and you could actually do it for the Van Dyke Brown too, is that you could use Crest paper. And here's Crest paper right here. That this is from a place called, where did I see that at? Right here. It's from a company called Paperworks. But I just Googled Crest. I'm not saying to buy it from this place. I'm just saying that this is a place where it is available. Now, I did look at the Crane's website, Crane Paper Company. They're in Connecticut, and they were all out of this at the time. But we also have this available in the bookstore, and it's 25 cents a sheet for an 8.5 by 11. So it's a fairly cheap paper compared to it's very cheap compared to the Hanamill Platinum Rag. So the first few prints you make, I mean, you can go spend $2 and get 8 pieces, and just get your hands wet making prints. Now you might find that you really like this paper. I really like this paper for making cyanotypes because it's very thin, and it'll wash really quickly and so forth, as I talk about in the cyanotype video. But it is very delicate, and you have to handle it very carefully in the wash and stuff. Now this will work good for cyanotype. It'll work good for Van Dyke Brown, and it'll work good for platinum and palladium, but it does not work well for gum printing because it's so thin, and the gum printing has to be in water so long it just falls apart. So I do not recommend this paper for watercolor paper or for gum printing. So if you don't want to fool with messing around with different papers and stuff, I would recommend getting this Hanamill Platinum Rag. This is from B&H Photo. You can see them up in the corner here. Now Bostic and Sullivan does sell this also, but they were all out of it at the moment, so I don't know when they'll get more. They probably will have more by the time you actually watch this video. But so you could get it from them or get it from B&H Photo, and again, they should have this available in the bookstore. And a number of students inquired about where to actually get art supplies at, so I wanted to show you. This is Blick Art Supplies, and I believe they even have a store, a brick and mortar store in Cincinnati, if you wanted to actually go to a store. But this is Arch's Palantine paper, and it's another paper that was developed especially for printing alternative processes on. So it works good for it'll work good for basically any of the processes, just like the Hanamill Platinum Rag. This was made specifically for platinum printing, but it'll work good for Van Dyke Browns, for cyanotypes, and gum prints also, because it is a heavy paper. So when you look at papers like this, though, this is made by Arches. I'm going to scroll down here to the papers, and this is just the Palantine right here, but you can see it's 310 grams, the weight of the paper. So it's a heavier paper. It's not a thin paper, and that's why this will work good if you're doing like gum printing. The list price is $22.68 a sheet, but this Blick sells it for $16.96. That's for one sheet of paper, but the size of the sheet of paper is a 22 by 30, so it's a large sheet of paper. Now, if you order it, you don't want to just end up ordering one sheet of this. It's not cost effective to get this, but I just wanted to show you, if you went down to like Cincinnati or someplace and went in the art store, you could actually buy this paper, buy a sheet of it if you wanted to try it. And then what you would do is use, again, a steel ruler, and you could tear it into the size that you want. Now this paper is probably watermarked. I can't remember off the top of my head. I have used this paper. It prints very nice. And it probably has a watermark in it, and with the watermark, again, when you can read the name of the paper, it'll have Arches on it. When you can read that, that is the side that you print on. If it's backwards, you're seeing through the paper, it's not the right size. So the sizing is only on one side of the paper with most of these watercolor papers, so you can only print on one side and get a successful print. That's especially true for gum printing. So once you have the paper facing up, and you're going to tear a sheet of this paper up, again, you want to use a little pencil and always mark the face side, or the side that you're going to print on. So if you like tear it up into 8 by 10 pieces, in the left hand corner, bottom left hand corner someplace, as you tear the sheets up, just mark a little X with a pencil, and you'll know that's the size of the paper, the side of the paper that you're going to print on. Now to show you some other Arches papers, again, papers come in a cold press or a hot press. So when you're doing this class, you want to always get hot press paper. So if we look down here, here's hot press sheet, and there's a 140 pound and a 300 pound. And the more the more weight that it has, like a 300 pound is a thicker paper, and you don't really need a 300-pound um, thickness of paper if you're unless you're printing really big. That's when you buy a heavier papers. If I was actually, these are 22 by 30. If I was actually doing 22 by 30 cyanotypes or something, then this heavier paper would be great. But if I'm going to tear it up in 8 by 10s, this 140-pound paper is just fine. So, and this is $8.65 a sheet. This is again Arches watercolor paper. Let's just scroll up to the name up here, I think. Yeah, Arches bright white watercolor paper. And they would have this at Dick Blick's too. Now, the one thing I want to point out on this is as you start looking at all these different papers, again, I've used a ton of different papers in the past. I've used like Artisto Fabriano, I've used Reeves BFK, and a lot of them are really good, but a lot of these papers aren't specifically made for printing alternative processes. Where the Hahnemehl paper, again, the reason that I recommend that paper is to save you a lot of trouble. If you went and bought some of this hot press paper and it didn't work good, then you would be stuck with it. But if you just stick with the Crane's Crest for the beginning and then um, switch over to the Hahnemehl Platinum Rag, I think you'll be in business. So I hope that helps. Good luck with your printing.